The objectives for this module is for you to be able to prepare a worksheet, prepare financial statements from the worksheet, journalize and post adjusting and closing entries, prepare post-closing trial balance, and to enumerate the steps in the accounting cycle. So, what is accounting cycle? Accounting cycle is a series of steps accountants perform during an accounting period relating to analyzing, recording, classifying, summarizing, and reporting useful financial information. And the purpose for this is to generate the final product of accounting, which are the financial statements. Now, here are the steps in the accounting cycle. So, we have already discussed this in the previous module, but we will just have a recap of what these steps are. The first one is analyzing the transaction by examining the source documents. And then the second one is to journalize the transaction. And then after preparing the journal entries, they will be posted to the ledger. And then a trial balance is prepared to test the equality of debits and credits. So kung mapapansin ninyo dito sa accounting cycle, we have been in the first to fourth step of the accounting cycle. Okay, now the fifth step is the adjusting entries. And then after preparing the adjusting entries, you will do the worksheet. And then from the worksheet, the financial statements. And then after that, the adjusting entries and then the closing entries are to be journalized and posted to the ledger. And then you will prepare a post-closing trial balance. And then the last step is the preparation of the reversing entries and also posting it to the ledger. And take note, this last step is only optional. So, this is not compulsory. So, pwede itong hindi na gawin, this last step. We will now proceed to the worksheet. So, what is a worksheet? Worksheet is a columnar sheet of paper used to summarize the information needed to make adjusting and closing entries and to prepare the financial statement. So take note, worksheet is only a tool to be used by accountants. It is not part of the formal accounting record. So hindi ito part ng financial statement. Ang worksheet ginagamit lang ng accountants para makapag-prepare ng financial statements. So, kung makikita ninyo, ibig sabihin, ang preparation ng worksheet, it is also not compulsory. It can be skipped actually if the accountant is very much familiar with the preparation of the financial statement. Pwedeng hindi na siya gumamit pa ng worksheet. Worksheet is used each time financial statements are prepared. So, kailan ba piniprepare ang financial statements? It can be monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. Pero if you are using an accounting system, if accounting system ang ginagamit ng isang company, it can prepare financial statement even daily. Kasi nga, computer na yung gumagawa nun. So, in this chapter or module, it will use a 10-column worksheet that includes the column of A, trial balance, unadjusted yun, also the adjustments. Then after the adjustments are the adjusted trial balance, and then income statement, and the last column is balance sheet. And then each column has a debit and a credit column. That's why, as you can see, there are only 5 columns, but each of them has a debit and credit column. That's why it is a 10-column worksheet. So what are the steps in the preparation of worksheet? So I will not read this, okay, but I will just move forward to the illustration para mas madali ninyong maintindihan kung paano ba piniprepare ang worksheet. So you may read it on your own. But let me first discuss the columns, each column in a worksheet. The first column is the trial balance column. Okay, here you just have to copy the trial balance that are already prepared. So if paggagawa kayo ng problem, trial balance is already given. So what you need to do is just copy what is in the trial balance to the trial balance column of the worksheet. And then you have to enter the title of each ledger account in the description column. Usually, only the accounts with balances ang nilalagay doon. Alternatively, all account titles in the chart of accounts, even if yung mga accounts na may 0 balances are listed. But mostly naman sa problem na may encounter ni given na yung trial balance, so you just have to copy it. The next column is the adjusted or the adjustments column. Adjusting entries which bring the accounts up to date to preparing the financial statements. So here, adjustments or adjusting entries will also be given. So what you just have to do is to copy the adjusting entries to the adjustments column of the worksheet. Now, if the account is not included in the original trial balance, kunwari nangyari dun sa adjusting entries, merong account titles na wala sa trial balance. So what you need to do is just add the account title below the totals of the trial balance. Okay? Mamaya illustrate natin. And then the amounts are written on the debit and credit sides of the adjustment columns, placing a key letter to the left of each amount. So, pag gumawa tayo ng adjusting entries, may letters yon. Ang ilalagay na lang dun sa left side ng each amount is yung letter. For example, letter A, adjusting entry. So, pag lipat nyo siya sa adjustments column, ilalagay nyo lang yung key letter niya. Now, this key letter facilitates the actual journalizing of adjusting entries later. So, yun na nga yung sinabi ko kanina. And then after entering all the adjusting entries in the adjustments column, you just have to add the 2 columns. Now, the totals of the 2 columns or the totals of debit and credit should be what? It should be equal. Okay. Next column is the adjusted trial balance. Okay, so sa adjusted trial balance, dito natin ilalagay plus or minus the adjustments. Kasi diba, kung maalala ninyo, the first column is trial balance, that is the unadjusted. And then the second one is adjustments. So, yung mga amount na nasa adjustments, i-add or i-minus lang natin siya dun sa original trial balance or unadjusted trial balance. Now, if the item appears on the debit of the trial balance and there is a credit in the adjustment column, ano gagawin? Yan, subtract. You need to subtract them. Kasi magkaiba yung side nila eh. Isa debit, isa credit. And then, saan mo siya i-extend? You will extend the difference to the side of the larger amount. That's the rule. Kung alin ang mas malaki ang amount, dun ilalagay yung difference. Okay, if the item appears as debit, sa trial balance. And then debit din naman siya sa adjustment. So what will you do? You just need to add and extend the total to the debit side. The same goes with credit balances. Okay? Now, extend all accounts having balances in the adjusted trial balance column. For example, wala siyang amount sa adjustments, no adjustments. So what will you do? You just simply extend those account balances to the adjusted trial balance column. And then after that, you need to add the total debit and credit columns, and the two totals must be equal. Yeah. Now, if they are not equal, it just means that there must have been a mathematical error or error in extension. Kung bakit hindi naging equal yung total ng debit and ng credit. The next one is the income statement column. Okay, income statement column. Here, ang i-extend nyo lang ay lahat ng revenue and expenses account balances. Now, saan manggagaling yung account balances? It should come from the adjusted trial balance column. Okay, so i-extend nyo lang, kukopyahin nyo lang. Kung ano yung nakalagay sa revenue and expense account, ikokopya nyo lang siya sa income statement column. Now, since revenue carry credit balances, so i-extend nyo siya sa credit column. Now, ang expenses di ba ay debit, so you just need to extend them to debit column. And then after that, you need to subtotal each column. Now, take note, here, hindi pa magbabalanse yung dalawang column, yung debit and credit. Hindi pa sila equal. Okay? Now, if the total revenue exceed the total expenses, then the difference is net income. And then, because revenue, which is credit, exceeded the total expenses, which are debit, so the difference should be added to the debit column total. Kasi nga, di ba siya yung mas maliit yung total in order to bring the two columns into agreement. Later, I will show you this one, okay? Now, if the total expenses exceed the total revenue, so ibig sabihin non-net loss. Kaya mas malaki ang debit kaysa sa credit, so you need to extend or you need to put the amount of net loss or add it to the credit column total para rin mag-reconcile or mag-bring into agreement yung total ng dalawang columns. The next column is the balance sheet column. Here, you just need to extend the asset, liabilities, and owner's equity accounts from the adjusted trial balance to the balance sheet column. So take note kung revenue and expense income statement column sa balance sheet, asset, liabilities, and owner's equity ang i-extend natin sa balance sheet column coming from the adjusted trial balance column. So debit the assets and credit the liabilities and owner's equity amounts. Okay. Note that the beginning rather than the ending balances of the owner's capital is carried to the credit column. Okay? So, yung ending balance ng owner's capital ang nilalagay natin dun, ha? Now, after that, you need to also to add both side. And take note, hindi pa rin yan mag-balance. Hindi yan magiging equal. Okay. Specifically, the following steps should be taken until the error is discovered. Kasi di ba paano kung hindi nag-equal yung total ng adjusted trial balance. So what you need to do is to re-add the debit and credit column. Kasi di ba minsan nagkakamali ng pindot sa calculator. Now, if the column totals do not agree, you need to check to see if some items are extended incorrectly. Anong ibig sabihin niyan? Maaari kasing debit na ilagay natin sa credit or maaaring nasa credit na ilagay naman sa debit side. Next is re-add the adjusted trial balance column. So you have to see if the totals agree. If it do not agree, what you need to do is to make sure that each adjustment is properly added or subtracted. Baka kasi nagkamali, for example, parehong debit pero napag-minus. Maali namang hindi sa debit, yung isa credit pero pinag-add naman. So yun yung mga pwedeng maging error. And then number 3, re-add the adjustment columns. And then after that, re-add the trial balance column. So as you can see here, magbabalik ka pa isa-isa sa bawat column. Pinakahuli na yung trial balance. Okay, so ganun yung technique. Huwag ka magsisimula sa trial balance kasi maaring, paano kung ang mali lang naman is nasa adjusted trial balance. Diba? So you just need to work back per column. Now, here is the illustration of a worksheet. This one, itong 3 lines na ito, this is called the heading. Huwag ninyong kakalimutan ito. If you could recall, sa trial balance natin, meron din tayong heading, di ba? I already discussed this, but I will discuss it again. The first line is the name of the business, or if hindi available ang name ng business, the name of the proprietor. The second line is the name of the report. Here, the report is worksheet. That's why we put worksheet. And then, the third line is the date. Here, there is a for the month ended January 31, 2015. Pwede rin naman for the year ended. Depende kung ano yung ginagawa mong report. Is it a yearly report or is it a monthly report? Okay? Then, here are the column names. So, the first column is the account title. Tapos, nandito na yung mga columns natin na 5. Trial balance, adjustments, adjusted trial balance. We have here the income statement and then the balance sheet. And don't forget to put debit and credit on each of the column. Punta tayo muna sa trial balance. As you can see here, sabi nga natin kanina sa discussion, you just need to copy the account titles and then the amounts of the given trial balance to the trial balance column. And then you have to add them and they should be equal. The next step is to put the amount of the adjusting entries to the adjustments column of the worksheet. As you can see here, there are several account titles that are listed below after the total of the trial balance. Kasi nga, ito yung mga account titles that are not here sa original trial balance. That's why we add them below. Okay? Now, in the adjusting entries, if the account is in the debit, you have to put it in debit. And if it is on credit, you have to put it on credit. For example, here, letter A. We can see here that the adjusting entry is debit supplies expense and then credit supplies. As you can see here, the amount is copied to the credit side of supplies, and then here is on the debit side of supplies expense, because the entry is debit supplies expense and credit supplies. Same goes with the rest of the adjusting entries. And then after you copied the adjusting entries to the adjustments column, the next step is to add the debit and credit, and they should be equal. Okay? And then we now proceed to the adjusted trial balance. As you can see here, on cash, di ba? Meron siyang debit sa trial balance, pero wala siyang entry sa adjustment. So, what should be done? You just have to extend the amount. Kung nasa debit yan, lalagay mo rin sa debit ng adjusted trial balance. Accounts receivable. As you can see here, there is a amount on the debit side and there is also another amount on the debit side of the adjustments. So, dahil pareho silang debit, what you need to do is to add them. So, 9,000 plus 3,360. So, the total is 12,360 extended to the debit column of the adjusted trial balance. Kasi nga, pareho silang debit. The other one, supplies. As you can see here, nasa debit siya. Pero sa adjustments, nasa credit. So, anong gagawin? You need to subtract them. So, that is 7,500 minus 2,380. So, what is the rule? Kung saan mas mataas ang amount na column, dun natin siya i-extend. So, here, you can see that debit has a higher amount, which is 7,500 than the credit. So, yung difference nila in-extend sa debit column. Same goes with the prepaid insurance. You see here. Okay? So, the difference is here. Now, for the rest, ganun lang din ang gagawin. Paano kung meron lang sa adjustments? As you can see here, wala siya dito. Dito lang siya meron sa adjustment. So, i-copy mo lang. Extend lang. Okay? Dito rin, ganun din. So, hanggang sa makopya siya lahat. And then, after that, you need to add that debit column and then the credit column. Tapos, dapat equal sila. Sa income statement naman, like I discussed kanina, ang i-transfer lang natin or i-extend natin ay lahat ng revenue and expenses. Yan. Lahat ng expense. Pero syempre, wag itong prepaid taxes. Ang prepaid taxes kasi ay asset. Accumulated depreciation, kontra asset yan. Unearned service revenue, that is a liability. Salaries payable, liability rin yan. So, hindi mo yan dapat isama. Okay? Like I said, lahat lang ng revenue and expense ang i-extend. Dito sa income statement. Yan. And then, after that, you need to total. Ito, hindi mo na ito total. Bababa mo na lang. Tapos, total din ito. So, nakita natin. So, you have to total the debit and then yung credit nga. As you can see, sa subtotal na to, hindi sila equal. Okay? So, huwag kayo muna magpanik kasi hindi talaga sila mag-i-equal. Ano lang ang kailangan mong gawin? You need to subtract the total of the debit and the credit. As you can see here, the total of credit is higher than the total of debit, which means there is a net income. Now, saan natin ilalagay yung difference? Doon sa kung saan mas maliit yung amount. So that, pag in-add mo siya, tingnan mo pag in-add mo siya, magiging 21,910 na, which is equal to the total of credit na 21,910. Okay? The next column is the balance sheet column. Ano naman ang i-extend natin dito? All the assets, liabilities, and owner's equity. So, yan. Extend natin yan. So, nakita nyo dito, may pangilan-ilan. Kasi nga, itong 2,200 na prepaid taxes, this is asset. Ito namang accumulated depreciation, kontra asset yan. So, dyan din yan. Okay, and also the unearned and salaries expense. Salaries payable, sorry. Salaries payable. Pareho yung liability. Kaya dyan natin yan nilagay sa balance sheet. And then the same goes here. You need to get the total of debit and the total of credit. As you can see, they are unequal. And the debit amount is higher than the credit amount. So where are you going to put the difference? You put the difference on the lower amount. Okay? So that when you total them, the debit and credit totals will now be reconciled or will now be equal. So, ganun lang yung paggawa ng worksheet. So, here is the adjusting entry. Ito yung pinanggalingan ng nilagay sa adjustments. Okay, the next one is the preparation or preparing the financial statements from the worksheet. So, napakasimple na kasi kapag ka na-complete mo na yung worksheet, kung ano yung nilagay sa worksheet, yun na lang din ang ililipat sa financial statement. So, take note, ang unang ginagawang financial statement is the income statement. As you can see here, meron ulit tayong heading. Same ang ilalagay. Okay, yun nga lang ito dahil is income statement, so statement of income or income statement na lang. So here is the format. You need to put first the revenue and then less operating expenses. And then you have to list all the expenses here, total the expenses. So yan, the total operating expenses. And then you have to subtract. Subtract the total expenses from the service revenue to get the net income. Itong net income na to, ito yung difference dun sa debit and credit ng income statement at saka balance sheet, as you can recall. The next one is the capital statement or the statement of changes in owner's equity. Okay, take note, meron ulit tayong heading. Tandaan niyo, meron, kagaya yan ng worksheet, income statement, and statement of changes in equity, meron siyang nakalagay na for the month ended. Hindi date lang ang nakalagay. Okay? So, sa statement of capital or statement of changes in equity, the first one is the capital beginning balance. That is the beginning balance kaya nga January 1. So, the beginning balance is 50,000. Itong ina-add dyan, additional investment. Dito sa illustration na to, zero siya kasi wala naman in-invest yung owner. Pero kung maka-encounter kayo ng problem wherein nagbigay ng additional investment yung owner, ilalagay niyo dito yon. Okay? And then the net income for the month, which is computed in the statement of income or income statement. That is 7,435. You have to get the total. And ang binabawas natin dito ay withdrawal. Okay, less 3,000. So now you get the capital end, which is 54,435. The next report is the balance sheet. Now, a classified statement of financial position or balance sheet is subdivided by the assets and liabilities in order to provide a more specific information for the users of the financial statement. Ang ibig sabihin lang nun, sinasubdivide natin ang asset into current assets and non-current assets. Same goes with liabilities. Meron din siyang current and non-current liabilities. Here, sa current assets, these are cash and other assets that are converted into cash or used up on a relatively short period of time, usually 1 year or less. So take note ha, kina-classify natin as current assets, syempre firstly yung cash or those other assets na pwede i-convert into cash or pwede siyang consume or magamit for a short period of time, which is 1 year or less. Now, current assets commonly used by a service-type enterprise include cash, accounts receivable, notes receivables, and prepaid expenses. Ang non-current naman, they are listed in the order of Ang current assets naman are listed in the order of liquidity. Kaya nga, ang pinakauna dyan ay cash. Okay, kasi cash na yun eh. Di mo na siya i-convert into cash. Okay, tapos sa mga kasunod nun, yung madaling i-convert into cash. Kaya kadalasan, ang cash, ang kasunod niya, accounts receivable. Kasunod ng accounts receivable ay inventory. Pero syempre, service ito, so walang inventory. Kasunod ay supplies. And the next one is prepaid expenses. Okay, non-current assets. So they are acquired for the use in the business. Pinili sila para gamitin sa business. Hindi sila ibebenta. And then usually, they have a longer period of time. Example niyan ay long-term investments, property, plant, and equipment, and then intangible assets, and then other assets. Now, pagka property, plant, equipment, in-acquire ito para gamitin sa business. Hindi siya pang benta. Okay? For example, bumili ka ng computer. So, hindi mo ibebenta yung computer. Kaya ka bumili kasi gagamitin mo. So, pag yun ang purpose mo, yung computer, it should be included in the property, plant, and equipment. Pero pag kunwari, bumili ka ng computer, ang purpose mo is ibenta rin ito. Kasi nga, ang negosyo mo ay ganun. Bumibili ka ng equipment, then binibenta mo din. So, it is not part as ng property, plant, and equipment. It should be part of the current asset or the merchandise inventory. They are also called fixed asset because they are used for a long-term purpose. For example, ang land, building, diba? Matagal mo silang gagamitin. Lalo na ang lupa. So, current liabilities. Pag sinabi natin current liabilities, these are debts or utang na due within 1 year. Okay? Or the payment of which normally will require the use of current assets. Okay, kaya nga current liabilities lang sila kasi nga within 1 year lang sila babayaran. And then, current liabilities are usually listed in the order of their maturity. Ibig sabihin ng maturity, yung due date nila. As sooner a liability is to be paid, the earlier is normally listed. So, example nito ay accounts payable, notes payable. Notes payable, short term lang kasi may mga notes payable na long term. Unearned revenue. Pag sinabi natin unearned revenue, these are revenues that are not yet earned. Sabihin, binayaran ka na ng kliyente, pero hindi ka pa nagre-render ng service. Another one is accrued expense. So, ang accrued expense, nagamit mo na yung expense, pero hindi mo pa nababayaran. Kasama din yan yung salaries payable. Next is the non-current liabilities or long-term liabilities. Ito yung mga utang na paid for a long period of time, usually more than 1 year. Now, the ones with earliest due are listed first. Examples are notes payable, mortgage payable, and also bond payable. Here is the illustration of a balance sheet. As you can see in the heading, there is a difference ng balance sheet among the other report. Ano yun? Yun, yung date. Ano? As you can see, yung date niya, walang for the year or for the month ended. Ang nakalagay lang ay, date. Okay? So, tandaan niyo yan. So, paggagawa ng balance sheet, ang pinakauna ay asset, kasunod ang liability, panghuli ang capital. Tapos, take note yung asset, di ba? We have current, and we also have property, plant, and equipment. Under current assets, ang pagkakasunod-sunod niyan is according to liquidity or convertibility into cash. That's why ito ang sunod-sunod niyan. Then you have to total that. Total the current assets. So here is the total current asset. And then the property, plant, and equipment, take note, we have here the example equipment. And then after that, you have to deduct or less the accumulated depreciation. So that's why this is 25,600 less 175. So that is 25,425. And then the total of property, plant, and equipment or non-current asset is added to the total of current assets to get the total assets. And that is 96,555. Okay, the next one is the liability. Here you can see current liabilities lang ang meron kasi ngayon lang yung given sa illustration natin. But sometimes meron non-current liabilities, so you have also to list them after the current liabilities. Okay, so we have here the current liabilities and then you have to total them. So that is 42,120. And then the last part is the capital. Take note kung ano yung nakuha ninyo dun sa statement of changes in equity or statement of capital na amount ng capital balance and yun ang ilalagay nyo dito. And then you have to add the two. Add them. 42,120 plus 54,435. The total liabilities and capital is 96,555, which is equal to the total asset. Tatandaan ninyo ha, ang ginagamit natin kasi dito is the accounting equation, which is asset equals liability plus capital or owner's equity. Yun lang yun yung balance sheet. Okay? Next is the statement of cash flows. Sa statement of cash flows, dito pinapakita kung ano yung mga nangyari sa cash. Okay? So, dapat daw ang cash flow information ay maging useful in providing users of financial statements. Kung paano daw na-generate yung cash and the need of the enterprise to utilize those cash flows. And also the economic decisions that are taken by users require evaluation of the ability of an entity to generate cash and timing and certainty of their generation. Now, in statement of cash flows, there are three kinds of activities. The first one is operating activities. The second one, investing activities. And the last one is the financing activities. When we say operating activities, ang involved na elements dito ay revenues and expenses or yung tinatawag na elements that affect income statement. Sa investing activity naman, these are the increases or decreases in assets. So take note ha, sa investing, ang element na involved dito ay assets. Making a loan is an investing activity because the loan creates a receivable from the lender. Ibig sabihin, nagpautang yung company. So, pag nagpautang ang company, that is asset. Kasi nga, nagkaroon siya ng receivable, and receivable is asset. Next is financing activity. Sa financing activity, dito natin makikita kung saan nanggaling yung funds. Dalawa ang pwedeng paggamitan ng fund ng business. It's either from investors or creditors. Now, pag investors, anong element ang affected dyan? Yung tinatawag nating capital. Pag creditors, anong affected na element? These are liabilities. Okay, so therefore, ang element na involved sa financing activities ay capital and liabilities. Okay, payment to creditors include principal payments only. Hindi kasama din yung interest. Okay? Kasi ang payment of interest ay ano? It is an operating activity. Here is an example of a cash flow statement. As you can see, it also has heading, and in the heading, magaya din siya ng income statement, statement of changes in owners' equity. Kasi may nakalagay na for the month or for the year ended. You can see here the cash flow from operating activity. Yung mga na-receive sa customer, naka-positive sign siya. Pero yung pinambayad sa salaries and operating expenses, naka-negative sign. So therefore, ito ay positive, this is negative, so you have to deduct. Okay, subtract mo sila. Now, negative, kasi nga, mas malaki yung outflow kaysa sa inflow. So, ang net cash used for operating activities is 9,300. Same goes with the investing activities. Here, isa lang, nagbayad lang. So, tandaan nyo pagka nagbayad or outflow, lumabas yung pera, naka-close in parenthesis. Ibig sabihin kasi ng deduction. Okay? So, dahil siya ay binayad, that's why it is enclosed in parenthesis, yung 12,800. The last one is the cash flows from financing activity. So, here you can see cash investment by owner. So, inflow yan. The other one, nangutang sa bangko, inflow din yan. Pero yung isa, nag-withdraw yung owner ng kanyang investment for personal use. So, that's why it is a deduction. Mas malaki yung inflow kaysa sa outflow. So, that's why this one is positive. Now, negative, negative, and positive. So, you have to deduct the 9,350 and the 12,800 from the 67,000 pesos. So, the cash provided for financing, no, this one. The cash provided, the net increase in cash is 44,850. Now, dahil nagsisimula pa lang ang business, kaya zero pa yung cash balance beginning niya. So, that's why it is just carried down sa baba yan. Yung 44,850. So, that is the illustration of a statement of cash flows. Next is the journalizing and posting of the adjusting entries. So, ang gagawin lang yung adjusting entries na ginawa, ina-journalize na, syempre yun naman yung gawin. And then after that, ipopost yung journal entries to the ledger. So, adjusting entries, they are first recorded in the worksheet. Pagkatapos nun, ilalagay sa journal, and then sa ledger. Okay. Tapos, no explanation is required. Lalagyan lang siya ng adjusting entries. Pero ito, skip na natin process na ito. Next one is the closing process. Ayan, closing na. So, ibig sabihin, matatapos na. So, ang closing entries, they are prepared at the what? End of accounting period. What is the purpose for that? And that is to bring the balances of, take note, temporary or nominal accounts to what? To zero. Zero na natin yun. Ngayon, ano ba yung mga temporary or nominal accounts? So, they are revenues, expenses, and drawing. So, ang ibig sabihin yan, yung lahat ng accounts ng revenue, expenses, and drawing ay i-zero out na sa closing entry. Okay? Now, there is an account or clearing account which is called income summary. Ito yung ginagamit natin in the preparation of the closing entry. For you to further understand, look at the illustration. Pero before that, Discuss muna natin yung steps in closing process. Ano ba muna yung kino-close? Una, lahat ng revenue accounts. Okay? Para siya ma-close, di ba, ang normal balance ng revenue ay credit. So, para ma-close yan, i-debit mo siya. Ano naman ang i-credit mo? E di yung income summary. Yan lang. Next one is the closing of the expense accounts. So, dahil ang-expense ay debit, so ano gagawin natin? I-credit natin yung mga expense account para ma-close. Ang i-debit naman ay income summary. So, na-close na yung revenue, na-close na rin ang expense. Ano nang natira? Yung income summary. So, i-close naman natin yung income summary. Ano? Paano gagawin natin? Pag daw credit balance yung income summary, yun ay nagre-represent ng net income. So, para ma-close siya, anong gagawin natin? I-debit natin yung income summary, i-credit ang capital. Vice versa. Pag debit balance, ibig sabihin, loss. So, ano gagawin sa income summary? I-credit. Debit yung capital, credit yung income summary. Now, the last closing entry is the closing of the owner's drawing account. So, saan naman siya i-close? Hindi na natin gagamitin yung income summary kasi naka-zero na yun. So, ang gagawin natin, i-close na lang natin ang owner's drawing account sa capital account. So, if ang owner's drawing account ay may debit balance, so i-credit natin siya. Ang i-debit naman natin ay capital. Okay? Here is an example or illustration of, this is wrong. Okay? Mali yan. Burahin natin yan. That's not a cash flow illustration. That is an illustration of the closing entries. Look here. As you can see, the first entry is the closing of the revenue account. So, anong nakalagay? Debit yung revenue, credit yung income summary. The second entry is the closing of the expense accounts. So, naka-debit yung income summary, naka-credit lahat ng expense kasi nga ipo-close na natin. And then the third one is the closing of the net income to capital. Or ipo-close na rin natin yung income summary. So, dahil mas malaki yung credit kaysa sa debit, i-debit natin yung income summary para ma-close na siya. And then credit capital. And then the fourth one is the closing of the drawing account. Since drawing is a debit balance account, kaya ang ginawa natin, credit natin yung drawing para ma-zero mo siya. I-debit naman natin yung capital. Okay? Okay, we will now proceed to the last report, which is the post-closing trial balance. As you can see, a post-closing trial balance is a trial balance prepared after the adjusting and closing procedures. That's why, as you can see here, the sample, see may heading again, and because this is a trial balance, as you can see, yung lang ang. Now, anong nilalagay natin dito? Dahil na-close na yung temporary or nominal accounts, which are revenue, expense, and equity, ang nakalagay na lang dito ay asset, liability, at saka capital. Basically, ito lang yung mga amounts or accounts na nasa balance sheet. Okay? Lalagay lang natin sila sa kanilang normal balances. Like here, diba lahat ng asset, yan ay debit. So, nasa debit siya. Pero ito, dahil ito ay contra asset account, nakalagay siya sa credit. And then liability and capital, their normal balances are credit. So that's why yung amount nila nakalagay sa credit. And pag tinotal mo yung debit and credit, dapat ay ano? Equal. This is the last report na gagawin sa preparation ng financial statement. Okay, so what are interim statements? When we say interim statements, they are financial statements prepared for a period less than a year. So they are essential in providing investors and others with timely information of the progress of an enterprise. Kasi nga, di ba, usually, financial statements, piniprepare yan after a year. Pero there are certain instances wherein kailangang malaman ng mga investors or mga potential suppliers yung standing ng company as of the current period. So, paano pag hindi pa tapos yung year? Ibig sabihin ba, hindi na pwedeng gumawa ng report? No. Pwede pa rin. Ang gagawin nga lang ay yung tinatawag natin mga interim statements. Because they are usually prepared on a monthly or quarterly basis. Okay? And then the last one is the reversing entries. Now, there are certain types of adjusting entries that are being reversed. Okay? So they are called reversing entries because they reverse the effects of the adjusting entry to which they relate. The purpose of reversing entry is to what? To simplify the first entry relating on the same item in the next accounting period. Okay, so that is the last topic for this module, and this will also be the last module for your subject, fundamentals of accounting. So for further question, you may message me or you may ask your questions sa ating online session. That's all, and